Good afternoon. If I could ask people to take their seats, we'll get underway. Welcome to everyone this Friday afternoon in Washington. We're delighted to see so many people here. My name is David Bowes, and I'm the Executive Vice President of the Cato Institute, and I want to welcome everyone here and everyone watching us for a very interesting discussion. We always worry about the kind of economics that students learn in American universities. But apparently, if you learn your Marxist economics in an actual Marxist country, it produces a sort of inoculation. At least, Václav Klaus's studies at the Prague School of Economics seem to have eventually made him the most economically literate president in the world, with the possible exception of Nobel laureate Jed Bartlett on NBC's West Wing. Václav Klaus is part of the new era of Czech history. He started his political career in December 1989 when he became Federal Minister of Finance. In that capacity, he managed the country's transition from a non-convertible currency to a stable convertible currency. In 1990, he became chairman of what was then the strongest political entity in the country, Civic Forum. After its demise, he co-founded the Civic Democratic Party and was its chairman for a decade. In October 1991, Klaus was appointed Deputy Prime Minister of the Czech-Slovak Federation, becoming Prime Minister of the Czech part of the Federation in 1992, and then of the independent Czech Republic from 1993 to 1997. He is well known for having insisted on establishing the legal and institutional framework for a stable, modern, free market economy, the rule of law, an independent judiciary, and commercial law, and also for managing what came to be known as the Velvet Divorce with Slovakia, which has proved, I think, to be good for both countries. We're proud to have published a collection of his speeches from those years called Renaissance, the Rebirth of Liberty in the Heart of Europe, which is available at www.cato.org and at fine online bookstores everywhere. We're also proud that he served on the International Selection Committee when the Cato Institute first presented the Milton Friedman Prize for Advancing Liberty. What is perhaps most impressive, as one who knows a lot of economists, is that this economist got out on the hustings, campaigned for free market reforms, and worked to organize anti-communist, anti-socialist Czechs into an effective political force. Thanks in large part to his work, the Czech Republic today is no longer behind the Iron Curtain or mired in post-Soviet socialism. Instead, it's a normal European country, a term that means much more to people who were for so long separated from the heart of Europe than it would to us, and part of the European Union. I'm not sure Václav Klaus is lucky to be in the European Union, but I'm sure the European Union is lucky to have him as a strong voice for free trade, free markets, and federalism. Please welcome the President of the Czech Republic, Václav Klaus. Thank you.
David, ladies and gentlemen, it's really a pleasure to be here again, to have a chance to speak here, to see many friends here. Thank you very much for the invitation. I met your president at Crane 5 weeks ago in Chicago at the Milton Friedman Memorial Service, and he told me then the invitation is permanently open, so I'm here. I came here today as president of the Free and Democratic Czech Republic, of a country which it's now already more than 17 years ago succeeded in getting rid of communism, of a country which, as was mentioned here, quite rapidly, smoothly, and without unnecessary additional costs overcame its communist past and transformed itself into a normally functioning European style parliamentary democracy and market economy of a country which is an integral part of the free world, again, I would stress, member of NATO, member of the European Union. David, I'm not so sure they are so lucky with me there. And country which is, I believe, a good friend of the United States of America. I came here with an important delegation to demonstrate our friendship with your great country, and I'm concluding my week-long visit here in Washington, D.C., after having met Vice President Cheney, Secretary of Defense Gates, and other leading U.S. politicians. This is not my first speech in Cato. My today's presentation cannot be, however, totally different from my past presentations. I am afraid I am stubborn and conservative. So I have to continue. Everyone has a list, mostly an implicit one, of issues, problems, challenges, which he feels and considers with his experiences, his prejudices, his sensitivities, his preferences and priorities to be crucial, topical, menacing, relevant. So I will use this opportunity to reveal at least some of the topics from that list of mine. All are inevitably related to something that was absent during most of my life in the communist era. What I have in mind is, of course, freedom, something the Americans and Cato Institute value very highly, in spite of the fact that they did not experience its non-existence or absence personally. This experience of ours provides us with a special sensitivity, if not oversensitivity, in this respect. So my question is, where do I see now, at the beginning of the 21st century, the main dangers or main threats to freedom? I will not speak about some, looking at the headlines, currently very fashionable topics. Especially, I do not intend to speak about our external enemies, about Taliban, Al-Qaeda, or Islamic fundamentalism, because I have nothing special to say or add to this issue. And definitely I don't want just to repeat the well-known arguments and facts. This issue is also heavily burdened by the weight of political correctness, which bothers me. I consider more important to speak about our internal challenges, because I'm convinced that our ability to go ahead and eventually to face external dangers depends to a large extent on our beliefs, visions, convictions, internal strengths, coherence, ability to function, etc. I will therefore concentrate on three main challenges of the current era as I see them, as I feel them. My first topic is connected with communism. We, together with all the other former communist countries, had to undergo a difficult transition. We got to understand very early that it had to be done at home, because as it was impossible to import a system devised abroad. It can't be done. We also got to understand that such a fundamental change was not an exercise, as I always say, in applied economics, but a man-made evolutionary process, and that we had to find our own path, our Czech way, towards an efficiently functioning society and economy. 10, 15 years ago, I spoke many times in this country, and not only once in Cato, about this process of transition, about its non-zero costs, about its benefits, tenets, pitfalls. Now, when it is over, we face a different problem. As I said, we already succeeded in getting rid of communism, but along with the predominant view at home and elsewhere, at that time, we erroneously hoped that the attempts to suppress freedom and to centrally organize, mastermind, regulate, control the whole society and economy were already matters of the past and almost forgotten historic relic. They are, to our great disappointment, still there. I see more examples of them in Europe and in most of international organizations than in America itself, but they can be found here as well. The reason is that there are new, very popular and fashionable isms, as I say, which again put various issues, visions, plans and projects ahead of individual freedom and liberty. It's social democratism, which is nothing else than a milder and softer version of communism. It is human rightism, as I call it, based on the idea of mostly positive rights applicable all over the world. It is internationalism, multiculturalism, Europeism, feminism, environmentalism, and other similar ideologies. So my first argument is communism is over, but attempts to rule from above are still, or perhaps again, here. Second point. The second main challenge I see is connected with our experience with the EU, but goes beyond it because it is part of a broader tendency towards denationalization of countries and towards worldwide supranationalism and global governance. The special sensitivity that I and many of my countrymen have makes me view many current trends in Europe rather critically. My opponents do not seem to hear the arguments and a priori keep rejecting the views they don't like. Being here in the United States of America, I think to understand my criticism requires familiar knowledge of the developments in the EU, its gradual metamorphosis from a community of cooperating nations to the union of non-sovereign nations and prevailing supranationalist tendencies. I'm afraid this is not the standard knowledge in America. I have always been in favor of friendly, peaceful, and for all of us enriching cooperation and collaboration of European countries. However, I have many times pointed out that the move towards an ever closer Europe, the so-called deepening of the EU, the rapid political integration, and the supranational tendencies without an authentic European identity and an European demos are not only unnecessary for the freedom and democracy in Europe, but damaging. Freedom and democracy, these two for us so precious values, cannot be secured without a parliamentary democracy within a clearly defined state territory. This is exactly what the current European political elites and their fellow travelers are attempting to eliminate. And this is exactly what bothers me. Third, the third main threat to individual freedom and liberty I see in environmentalism. To be specific, I do understand the concerns about eventual environmental degradation, but I do see a problem in environmentalism as an ideology and in ambitions connected with it. Environmentalism only pretends to deal with environmental protection. Behind their people-friendly and nature-friendly terminology, the adherents to this ideology make ambitious attempts to radically reorganize and change the world, human society, all of us, our behavior, and as well as our values. There is no doubt that it's our duty to protect rationally the nature for the future generations. The followers of the environmentalist ideology, however, keep presenting to us various catastrophic scenarios with the intention to persuade us to implement their ideas about us and about the whole human society. This is not only unfair, but extremely dangerous. What is, in my view, even more dangerous is the quasi-scientific form that their many times refuted forecasts have taken upon themselves. What belongs to this ideology? First, disbelief in the power of the invisible hand of free market, and again, belief in the omnipotence of state dirigism. Disregard for the role of important and powerful economic mechanisms and institutions, primarily that of property rights and prices, for an effective protection of nature. Misunderstanding of the meaning of resources, of the difference between the potential natural resource and the real one that may be used by man in the economy. Malthusian pessimism as regards the technical progress. Belief in the dominance of externalities in human activities. Promotion of the so-called precautionary principle, which maximizes the risk aversion without paying attention to costs. Underestimation of the long-term income and welfare growth, which results in a fundamental shift of demand towards environmental protection. This is demonstrated by the so-called environmental Kuznets curve hypothesis. And finally, erroneous discounting of the future, demonstrated so clearly by the highly publicized Stern report a few months ago. All of these problems and all of these views are associated with social sciences, not with natural sciences. This is why environmentalism, unlike scientific ecology, doesn't belong to the natural sciences. This fact is, however, not fully understood by the common people, by the media, and by numerous politicians. The hypothesis of global warming and the role of man in this process is the last and, till this day, the most powerful embodiment of the environmental ideology. I must admit that it has brought along many important, in quotation mark, advantages for the environmentalists. First, an empirical analysis of this phenomenon is very complicated due to the complexity of global climate and the mix of various long, medium, and short-term trends and causes. Second, their argumentation is not based on simple empirical measurements or laboratory experiments, but on sophisticated model experiments working with a range of ill-founded assumptions that are usually hidden and not sufficiently understood. The opponents of this hypothesis have to accept the fact that in this case, we are in the world of non-internalized externalities, another important advantage for this hypothesis. And I know that another issue is that people tend to notice and remember only extraordinary, rapid climate phenomena, but not normal developments and slow, long-term trends and processes. It is not my intention here and now to present arguments for the refutation, but if there are some experts in the methodology of science, I should say, for the falsification of this hypothesis. What I find much more important is to protest against the efforts of the environmentalists to manipulate people. Their recommendations would take us back into the era of statism and restricted freedom, and they are against our prosperity and against the prosperity of many other people in countries less developed all over the world. It is therefore our task to draw a clear line and differentiate between the ideological environmentalism and the scientific ecology. Well, I started my speech saying I wanted to use this opportunity to present my concerns about some non-negligible tendencies of the current era. I only hope you see and feel them as well. Thank you for your attention.
Do you want to recognize questioners, or do you want me to do that? You can do it. Okay, you should probably stay up here. Yeah. Thank you very much, Mr. President. And at this point, I have the honor and privilege of saying something that you don't hear very often in Washington. The President is willing to answer questions. So let me invite questions from the audience. We will bring a microphone around so that you can be heard. And please make your question in the form of a question. Do we have any questions? In the back, yes.
Mr. President, Bill Jones, Executive Intelligence Review. There is now a move within the European Union headed by Angela Merkel to try and make the climate change a major issue for the whole EU. And according to your opinion, I think you're actually absolutely correct that this would be disastrous economically for many of the countries of the Union. I would like to know what's your opinion. How can you organize an opposition to this and prevent some of this from happening? And secondly, given that Czechoslovakia also, I believe, still has a lot of uranium, what is your position with regard to development of nuclear energy, which has been taken off the table by the EU for even those countries which have developed nuclear energy plants?
So thank you for your question. Nevertheless, there are journalists here, so I would like to declare that I am not organizing myself opposition to Angela Merkel. Is that clear? And I hope the journalists will not publish anything different, but I can expect something like that with my experience in the last 17 years. No, it's not the issue of organizing opposition to that issue. I think it's our task to discuss those issues seriously, to have clear positions, strong views. I know that Yesterday in Brussels, during the debate at the European Summit, the Czech position was much more softer and milder than the position accepted by the European Union. So I think the current government in the Czech Republic is trying really to find some rational way. As regards uranium, it's another serious question, but well, I discussed it with some of you during the luncheon today. I was in October in Lahti, Finland, at the European Summit, and which was devoted to the issue of energy security. In addition to it, in the evening, President Putin was invited to answer questions. And well, after 2 hours of the serious discussion there, heads of states, heads of governments, I raised my hand and said, look, if I'm not really stupid or not understand foreign languages, in the 2 hours discussing energy security of Europe, the term nuclear energy has not yet been mentioned. Not mentioned, which means not opposed, simply not mentioned. And I think it's absolutely irrational, because you can't eliminate the dependence on Russian oil and gas, to stop using coal, and to be against nuclear energy. Such equation can't be solved, and I'm afraid that sooner or later the European leaders and European countries will have to come to the same conclusion. During the luncheon, I said that next to me was one important European leader, and he said, absolutely perfect. I agree with you fully. And I said, why don't you say it openly? That's the problem in Europe these days.
Yes, right there in the aisle.
R.J. Smith with the National Center for Public Policy Research and CEI. I'm wondering if the young students in the former Soviet countries, if they are beginning to develop an understanding of the importance and role of private property rights in protecting the environment. Because I know in the U.S., until the opening of Solidarity, it was common for most of the U.S. environmental economists to believe that the only way to protect the environment was to have communism, because factory managers act for the common good and would not dare pollute the environment. But under capitalism, they were trying to make profits, and they always destroyed the environment. It wasn't until they went to Poland that some of their eyes were finally opened.
Well, your question could have been relevant and for me challenging to answer some 15 years ago. Now the new generation has, I think, quite normal attitudes, and they already have no experience with communism, and they don't believe that communism can solve problems. So the fact that they experience enormous improvement in the environment in the Czech Republic in the post-communist era, if it would be an interesting study made here in Cato. If you take various indicators of human something positive issues achieved in the last 17 years, and if you measure the GDP growth, per capita consumption, and the level of education, I don't know, let's the length of age, and so on and so on. If you can pick any one of them, I am absolutely sure that the biggest improvement was done with all environmental indicators in our country. And it was due to one change. It was not due to the environmental policies, it was not due to Al Gore. It was due just to reintroducing private property prices, markets, and they helped to protect the environment. And this message is, I believe, still there, and the people know about it.
Yes, right here.
My name is Manjacek. I'm a Libertarian Party. And I have a question on the, you said that you're not doing any opposition to Angela Merkel. Who should organize opposition to that, to her efforts? Or why do you say that you will not want to be the leader of it?
I suppose I was misunderstood. I will speak very strongly against that. I just wanted to say that I'm not organizing an opposition, because that would be very inappropriate for a head of neighbor state to Germany. So let's differentiate those two things.
Yes, in the back. I see someone waving a white flag.
A green flag of opposition, I guess. Fred Smith, CEI. One of the things that's beginning to happen in Europe is, as we move from symbolism to reality, the German automobile industry, the Irish airlines, the utilities throughout Europe are beginning to say, we're willing to be symbolic, we're not willing to destroy our future. This is suggesting that if we can hold back the hysteria for another 3, 4, 5 years, the world can come to its senses and stop this attempt to demonize energy use. It's very important in the next few years, I think, that as much as possible, anything we can do in America, think tank world, and so forth, working with you and, of course, your groups directly, to find a way of introducing at least an element of dialogue into this, so it's not seen as inevitable as the only course for moral people to follow.
It was not a question, I think. It was a statement which I agree with. Those are the easiest questions to answer. You know, I like them very much.
By the wall.
Ginter Kletečka, Catholic University and Gala Space Flight Center. Right now at NASA there is a lot of talking that there should be budget raised in terms of funding global warming idea, and try to look more into the studying this effect if it's true. I wonder if there is a similar tendency in Europe or in Czech Republic that would have more funding for this particular research.
Well, as a former Minister of Finance, and I would say that to inject billions of dollars into studying global warming is the wasting of taxpayers' money. So I wouldn't recommend it to anyone. I think that the scientific evidence available is sufficient to tell us what is possible, what is not, where we go, where we are moving, and I don't think that that's necessary to put more money into that research. So the theories are there, the data are there, the scientists are there. Some of them I see here, and on the contrary, what would be necessary is to distribute the money already allotted to the studies of global warming, similar ideas, to distribute those funds in a fair and proper way, and not in a priori politically correct distribution, that just those who are in favor of that hypothesis are getting funds, and all those others are blocked from any financial support. That's the issue. More money wouldn't solve anything. Less money, better distributed.
Hi, Ivo Všetečka, I'm a freelancer from Washington, D.C. I just want to add something to that first question about uranium, which brings also interesting question that basically, yeah, surely it will bring some independency, for example, to the energy problems in Europe. But I don't know, somebody mentioned that, for example, Czech Republic has huge deposits of uranium, which I think it used to be true, but the true now is that not even Czech Republic imports uranium ore or fuel for nuclear power plants from Russia, which makes us basically not really independent. So speaking of oil, speaking of uranium ore, so that was basically just sort of like an addition. And my question is why basically conservative politics are kind of so scared of this question of global warming. I mean, lots of research has been done lately that I want to bring up the question of, for example, ozone hole and ozone layer, which came up like 30 years ago, was scientifically proved, and basically in 1987, basically all of the countries agreed like, well, this is happening, and sign up the Montreal Protocol. And basically now we can see, well, it's improving, we were right, and maybe it was even better for economy because lots of new, basically, fluorocarbons had to be replaced, and there were new technologies coming up, which was good for economy and for new technologies.
Well, it was not one question. So the last, as an old man, I will forget all the points. The last one was ozone hole. Well, that's a very good point. You know, environmentalism knows that all those ideas they bring are sooner or later rejected. Therefore, they must have a moving target, you know. So they started with the population bomb hypothesis of Professor Ehrlich. Well, we don't see anything like that. Then they moved to other issues. Ozone hole is one of them, you know. I remember some 20, 30 years ago, the opposite idea as global warming was quite popular in the United States. So they are shooting at a moving target, and they are ready to forget the ozone hole immediately. And the books are still there. The published books are still there. I'm absolutely sure the same will happen with the global warming books as with the ozone hole books. So this is one idea. The second point was the uranium deposits in the Czech Republic. Well, the fact that we import uranium from Russia now is one thing, but I think it's possible to find uranium in the Czech Republic still or again. But it was somehow so much discredited in the first moments after the fall of communism that we interrupted trying to get uranium, and now it's almost impossible to start talking about it again, but it is there in case the windmills will not bring us enough energy, and we will not want to return to the prehistoric times. People still would like to have air condition and other similar issues. I was recently, 2 weeks ago, in Japan. The official state visit, visiting the Emperor of Japan, and so. But then I was at the university in a very remote area, island of Kyushu, southern island in Japan, nowhere's land really. And this is the Japanese. I don't know what would be the American good example, but in Czech Republic it would be the Karlsbad, Karlovy Vary, the mineral resources, water coming all over the place, hundreds of springs, really, and in the evening the governor of the province was saying, "That's our mineral water. That's absolutely great, and you have to check it. Perfect." Next day I came to the politically correct, cosmopolitan Asia-Pacific university with students from 76 countries. Great. And we got, for lunch, we got Evian with glass bottles. It's rather heavy. So for me, who is not considered the great friend of environment protection, I would, having the power, I would prohibit delivering Evian in glass bottles across the whole world and drinking in an area where they have more than enough their own mineral waters. That's for me the environmental issue, not global warming theories. And so I think that we can hypothetically start using them, but maybe the windmills will solve the problem, so then it would not be necessary to do.
All right, a question from Andrei Larionov, and then from the woman behind him.
There are two parts of the story. One is the theory, and the other is...
Microphone.
Okay, do you hear me? Do you hear me? Okay, there are at least two parts of this story. One is the theory, and the other the policy. The theory is the global warming. Policy is the Kyoto Protocol. The Czech Republic is the signatory of the Kyoto Protocol and the member of the Kyoto Protocol. I'm not going to ask you whether you're going to organize any movement against Angela Merkel, but my question, whether the position of the President of the Czech Republic has any impact on the position of the government of Czech Republic towards the membership in the Kyoto Protocol. Is the government of the Czech Republic considering the options of participating in the second phase of the Kyoto Protocol, which is going to introduce even harsher limits on emission of CO2 and other gases for Czech Republic and for the economy of Czech Republic?
We are in a think tank, we are not making policy here, so I don't want to answer it that way. We are in the middle of a serious discussion at home about that issue, and the discussion continues, and I know that some members of the government have very strong views about that, some of them identical views with mine, so let's take it as a discussion, public discourse in the country. I can answer what the next policy move of the Czech Republic will be. That's not even the task to do it here.
Hi, my name is Tomoka Adachi from Catholic University of America and NASA Goddard Space Flight Center. One thing that I like to comment that I'm sorry that the Kyushu people didn't provide you their own water for you to drink. I thought, this is the Japanese culture that we'll do our best to please you. Probably they thought that AVM would really preferable for you rather than very hard water from Kyushu. And other thing that the global warming, it's not a religion. It's an observation that we observe what's happening on Earth. So that's what I wanted to mention. And another thing, so I really heard you, and I like to ask you, the energy is going to be issue all over the world. So what is your plan for alternate energy besides nuclear power plant? And also, if you are advocate for nuclear power plant, I like to suggest you have to consider the end cost, because in the United States, the end cost for taking care of the waste of the nuclear waste is quite a huge problem.
Thank you.
Well, this is the standard argumentation from the other side. So should I start a 2 hours lecture about one point after another? I simply disagree with you. I don't think it's necessary to create alternative sources of energy. Let's continue our life as it is. Let's not block technical progress. Let's wait for different price structures which will make some other energy sources possible to use and not impossible to use. No, it's not necessary to do anything like that. It's an unfair ambition to try to mastermind the mankind. This is exactly what the environmentalists do. And I didn't say that theoretically the fact whether the temperature measured 100 years ago and now is lower or higher. I'm not discussing that, and I'm not a climatologist, but as a scientist, I can understand some arguments of real scientists. As someone who spent years doing econometric research and mathematical statistics, have some understanding for the results of the climatologist. Nevertheless, this is not my topic. What I say is that environmentalism is a religion, not the fact whether the temperature is 1 degree higher or lower is a religion. Let's be clear. I differentiate very strongly scientific ecology from environmentalism, which is an ideology or religion. So I hope I made the point very, very clearly. And there are so many issues about it. I prepare a book, which hopefully will be published in 2 months about that topic. Maybe Cato could translate it into English, you know, if there is an audience for it. Nevertheless, there are so many issues about how big the eventual warming is. Big issue. Excuse me, I came yesterday from Montgomery, Alabama. The temperature there was, I think, in terms of Celsius, but in terms of Fahrenheit, the temperature in Alabama was 30 degrees higher than in Washington, D.C. And it's surprising that I'm still alive, you know. I survived such an incredible jump in the temperature, and I still can give a lecture at Cato Institute. You know, this is almost surprising. So now let's imagine that in 50 years the temperature will be half a degree higher than now. So hopefully the people 50 years from now will be as brave and as robust as I am, that they will survive the change. You know, this is my optimism, and I really believe that this is the ground for optimism of all of us.
That seems like a good note on which to end, but I'm going to take one last question right here.
Cato Institute. Mr. President, a very quick question, because I know you've been speaking for a long time. How concerned are you about the return of what seems to us from here as the return of authoritarianism in Russia? And what impact is that going to have on the Czech Republic and other Central European countries?
Well, I quite deliberately decided to choose 3 main challenges I feel. The fact that I didn't choose the potential new authoritarianism in Russia suggests immediately and that I don't see it as a real threat. I am much more afraid of the increase of attempts to again mastermind the human society from above in Europe and in the United States of America than being afraid of the new era of totalitarianism or autocratism in Russia. The first is for me a real problem, and this is the reason why I am afraid. The second one, really not. This is much more dangerous, in my understanding.
Thank you very much. I want to thank President Klaus for being here. We're honored to be the closing number for his Washington and U.S. visit. I'm not sure why he would want to come to Washington after being where it was 30 degrees warmer, but we're glad that he did. We're honored to have him here again.
I promised to make a speech at Cato, so how could I resist coming here?
Thank you. Well, we invite all of you upstairs for a glass of wine. We invite journalists to stay in this room for a few minutes if you would like to ask further questions to the President.